Today we're here to see some transphobes be proven wrong, which isn't that difficult to do, but it's always a great day. Hey Spuds, it's Jamie, welcome back to another video. If that's on the channel, I don't know, but welcome either way. I'm very glad to have you here, and today we're going to be reading a little article about how some transphobic politicians who wanted research to prove their transphobia very much showed the opposite. And we do love to see a transphobe embarrassed, and a win for trans community and just science in general, because, you know, science, facts, morality all supports trans people. Why is there chocolate on my computer? Oh dear, no. So today we are going to be reading an article called Utah Study on Trans Youth Care Extremely Inconvenient for Politicians Who Ordered It. The state's ban on gender-affirming pediatric care cannot be justified by science, a 2-year review concluded. Funny that, the thing that trans people, experts in trans healthcare, trans allies have been saying for years and years and years, gender-affirming care works. It is the method, it is the thing that should be accessible to trans people of all ages. There is gender appropriate care for trans kids through to trans adults. It is the way forward, okay? It's what trans people deserve. It is what improves well-being. Sure, if you want to do more studies in it, it's just going to show the same thing time and time again. Gender affirming bans on gender affirming care can never be justified. They come from nowhere but bigotry and hate and misunderstanding and a fear of the unknown. So let's read this article and see what science says that is something that trans people knew all along. In 2022, Utah Governor Spencer Cox was the rare Republican governor who seemed to truly care about the well-being of transgender kids. I don't understand what they're going through or why they feel the way they do, but I want them to live. He wrote in a letter that year explaining why he was vetoing a bill that would have banned 4 trans middle and high schoolers in Utah from playing on sports teams with classmates who shared their gender identity. This sports ban generally is ridiculous, and I will always bring it back to mentioning that trans women have been able to compete at the Olympic level in the women's category since 2004, and it's taken until the early 2020s for people to start kicking up a real fuss about it. This is not a new thing. Trans people being included in social life and accepted as their gender in social groups is not a new thing. The transphobes are acting like it's new and it's going to destroy the world. It's been around for decades. Barbara, just calm down.
Barbara, calm down.
And then I find it especially miserable when this transphobia targets kids. These are school kids who want to play sport with their friends. And it is disgusting that people are trying to stop that from happening. Trans people have a hard enough time fitting in, making friends, being accepted among peers as it is, without bigots being like,
no, you must be fully excluded.
We don't need your help, bigots, okay? Anyway, sorry. The Utah governor also said, all the research shows that even a little acceptance and connection can reduce suicidality significantly. Yes, a very true statement, because funnily enough, being accepted really helps people. Not just trans people, not just LGBTQ plus people, but anybody. Having connection, acceptance, and support in your life is so important. Unfortunately, LGBTQ plus people can often lack this, especially from family members like parents, grandparents, siblings. But every person who is trans, gay, LGBTQ plus in some way deserves that acceptance. Even if you don't find it among the family that raised you or the people that you've known for a long time, you will find it out there somewhere. Meanwhile, nationally, Republican politicians were making opposition to trans rights a core tenet of their platforms, filing hundreds of bills attacking trans kids at the doctor's office, at school, and on the field. I mean, we can just have a little Google and be like, how many active anti-trans bills are there in the United States right now? Trans Legislation Tracker 2025, 1,005 bills across 49 states, 122 passed, 501 active, promisingly 382 have failed. But the fact that they are just churning out the sheer number of transphobic bills is quite scary, to be honest. And it's true, these cover all different types of situations that trans people are just trying to live our lives in. Early in the 2023 legislative session, Cox capitulated, signing a bill that placed an indefinite moratorium on doctors providing puberty blockers and hormone therapy to trans kids with gender dysphoria. He what? Oh, he gave in. To capitulate is to cease to resist an opponent or an unwelcoming demand. It's to yield, basically. So in 2023, he yielded and he signed a bill that indefinitely prevented doctors from giving puberty blockers to kids in Utah. The bill ordered the Utah Health Department to commission a systematic review of medical evidence around the treatments with the goal of producing recommendations for the legislature on whether to lift the moratorium. Loads of big legal words. So they were like, let's ban trans kids from getting gender affirming care in Utah. And what it feels like is let's then do a study to further solidify this ban. Yay. We sincerely hope that we can treat our transgender families with more love and respect as we work to better understand the science and consequences behind these procedures, Cox said at the time. Like the first half of that, we sincerely hope that we can treat our transgender families with more love and respect. That sounds positive. The second bit sounds so wishy-washy, like somebody's got splinters from sitting on a fence. As we work to better understand the science and consequences behind these procedures. It's specifically the consequences behind these procedures bit that could read as negative consequences or positive consequences. And I'm not sure which angle he's going at because, he starts off by saying like, this should be protected. We should offer this kind of care for trans kids, recognizing the negative impacts on mental health that non-acceptance and lack of healthcare can have on trans people, but then yields and is like, I will sign this bill that means that trans kids cannot get gender affirming care. The very thing that I said they should have. I don't know more about it. I will not read more into it, but that sounds like an interesting path. Now, more than 2 years later, that review is here. And its conclusions unambiguously support gender-affirming medical care for trans youth. Not a surprise to trans people, maybe a surprise to some people, but honestly, just all the research shows. And like, if you look at the research that transphobes are like,
this is the research, this is what proves trans people wrong.
You read it and you're like, mate, that does not say what you just said that it said. Oh, and this other one that you sent me, that's been completely debunked because it's from the 70s and is really poor quality, and there's about 10 studies that have come out in the past 10 years that prove it wrong. So we'll put that one in the bin as well. Oh, and this third one you sent me, well, you do realize that it's been called out for being deeply methodologically flawed, and most of its conclusions have had to be withdrawn, and even the conclusions that could stay have had to be softened significantly. So it actually also doesn't say what you think it says. There's always an issue with the evidence that transphobes provide, or it's one-off cases and it's like, well done, Keith, you found one person who regrets transitioning. 1% regret rate is actually incredibly amazing within the medical field, because do you know that the average regret rate for surgeries generally is 14.4%, yet it's 1% for trans people, held to a different standard. You're never going to find a 0% regret for any medical procedure, but people expect that to be the case for trans people and gender affirming care, and when it isn't, suddenly it's a big problem. Suddenly it's like, oh my god, we must stop all of this. Or what, for the 99% of people where it's literally life-saving and life-changing in such a positive way? That doesn't make sense to me. We don't stop knee operations, we don't stop hip replacements. There's nobody holding up signs on the street saying stop rhinoplasties. All surgeries that have a significantly higher regret rate than trans surgeries. I'm not saying they should stop, I'm just showing the hypocrisy and the double standards that come from bigots. The conventional wisdom among non-experts has long been that there are limited data on gender-affirming pediatric care. The authors wrote, however, results from our exhaustive literature searches have led us to the opposite conclusion. Oh, I forgot one thing. I spoke too much about surgeries and regret rate. The other type of evidence that bigots like to rely on are philosophical thought pieces. I have literally had links sent and people saying,
oh, this proves you wrong, Jamie,
for all the things I'm saying that support trans people scientifically. And I've read it and it's literally just an opinion piece. I'm like, you cannot prove science wrong with an opinion piece. You cannot invalidate the existence of an entire community of people based on the opinion of a bigoted philosopher. It doesn't work like that. Anyway, the medical evidence review published on Wednesday was compiled over a 2-year period by the Drug Regimen Review Center at the University of Utah. Unlike the federal government's recent report on the same subject, which was produced in 3 months and criticized gender-affirming pediatric treatments, the names of the Utah report's contributors are actually disclosed on the more than 1,000-page document. Oh, wow. So wait, this internal review was rushed through and the people who did it didn't even want to put their name to it. I've just clicked through the link to have a little, we're going to digress slightly, and I'm going to have a little read about this report that was rushed through by the federal government where people didn't want to be named. An anti-trans fever dream. HHS publishes attack on gender-affirming youth care. Experts immediately slammed the report, which does not disclose its authors. Wow. 3 months ago, Donald Trump's administration issued an executive order attempting to stamp out standard of care medical treatments for transgender children. Doctors who provided such treatments would be prosecuted, it promised. Hospitals would lose all federal funding. So this review came out that was rushed through in 3 months. Apparently it does not make formal recommendations on gender-affirming medical treatments, but a press release alerts that the document makes clear that science and evidence do not support their use and the risks cannot be ignored. I'm guessing they're talking about gender-affirming care like puberty blockers and things like that. But experts in transgender healthcare promptly slammed the report, whose authors have not been disclosed. If you're so confident on what you're saying, if you really think that this is right, then why are you so scared? Because the people that so much hate are the trans people and the trans allies. How do you think the authors of the study that showed the evidence in support of gender affirming care, how much backlash do you think they received? But they still put their names to it. Anyway, so it's been slammed as a political, not scientific document. It's a post hoc justification for a political agenda they wanted to pursue anyway, says Kellen Baker, executive director of the Whitman Walker Institute for Health Research and Policy. You don't do good science in 90 days with a research question that's determined by political fiat. Somebody else also described it as anti-ethical to the way that science is normally conducted because of the political nature. So yeah, a rushed through study with a very political stance that was done in 3 months and the people that did it don't even want to put their name to it, or an extensive research and literature review that was done over the course of multiple years where the people who did it are like, we did it. This is who we are. Yeah, not shy to share our names. So the authors of this recent run, the one that we're talking about, the one that is actually accurate to gender affirming care, those authors wrote, the consensus of the evidence supports that the treatments are effective in terms of mental health, psychosocial outcomes, and the induction of body changes consistent with the affirmed gender in pediatric gender dysphoria patients. The evidence also supports that the treatments are safe in terms of changes to bone density, cardiovascular risk factors, metabolic changes, and cancer. What's really interesting, in the UK, we're currently dealing with a indefinite/permanent ban on puberty blockers for transgender youth, but cis kids with precocious puberty are still being prescribed puberty blockers. The exact same drugs that trans kids were able to access, and when I say kids, I mean teens, are still being prescribed to other people, including kids, including like 7-8-year-olds kids to pause puberty, only seen as a problematic, under-researched, dangerous medication when it comes to the trans community. Nobody's actually given a justification for why it's so problematic that would explain it only being banned for trans people. The reasons given would indicate it should be banned for everybody. So it's really confusing to me. Well, it's not, because it's transphobia, but transphobia is confusing, so it's confusing. It is our expert opinion that policies to prevent access to and use of gender-affirming hormone therapy for treatment of gender dysphoria in pediatric patients cannot be justified based on the quantity or quality of medical science findings or concerns about potential regret in the future, and that high-quality guidelines are available to guide qualified providers in treating pediatric patients who meet diagnostic criteria. So they've basically said, leave it up to the professionals. There is enough information, there is enough evidence out there to show that this is the right course of action, that this is the correct treatment. It works, it's effective, the regret rate is low, it's not dangerous, the doctors know what they're doing. Great. Why can't people listen to this? In the second part of their review, the authors look specifically at long-term outcomes of patients who started treatment for gender dysphoria as minors. This is a big thing people like to shout about, despite the fact that puberty blockers have been a drug that's been in use for decades. Loads of transphobes are just like,
Oh, but think about in 20 years' time.
and it's like, we've seen it, Barbara. We know. People exist. Overall, there were positive mental health and psychosocial functioning outcomes. While gender-affirming treatment showed a possibly protective effect in prostate cancer in transgender men and breast cancer in transgender women, there was an increase in some specific types of benign brain tumors. There were increased mortality risks in both transgender men and women treated with hormonal therapy, but more so in transgender women. Increased risk of mortality was consistently due to increase in suicide, non-natural causes, and HIV/AIDS. Patients that were seen at the gender clinic before the age of 18 had a lower risk of suicide compared to those referred as an adult. So basically, somebody says they're trans, let them speak to the professionals. Let them go down that route. Let them at least explore it. Let them at least talk about it with people who know what they're talking about. So although they did find an increased mortality rate, it doesn't sound like this was due to the treatment. And if people received that treatment before the age of 18, it lowered the risk of one of those top reasons why mortality rate was found to be increased in trans people. Submitted with the review was a set of recommendations compiled by advisors from the state's medical and professional licensing boards, the University of Utah, and a Utah nonprofit hospital system on steps the state legislature could take to ensure proper training among gender-affirming care providers in the event it decides to lift the moratorium. Has it now done it? Because this article is from May, like the article about the research article. I can't actually find any information. I'm going to assume that it's still in place because I feel like there would be a news article if it wasn't. But according to the Salt Lake Tribune, legislators behind the ban are already dismissing the findings they asked for. Funny that. It's like, hey, we really strongly believe in this thing that we don't actually have any evidence for, so let's like push to go find some evidence for it, and then we can uphold it even stronger, right? You're on board. Oh, the evidence has come in and doesn't support us. Let's just rip that up and put it in the bin. We ignore this. We never asked for a study. What are you talking about? Like, you can't do that. What the hell? In response to questions from the Tribune, Representative Katie Hall, who co-sponsored the 2023 ban, issued a joint statement with fellow Republican state rep Bridger Bollinger, the chair of the Legislators' Health and Human Services Interim Committee. Well, that's wrong. That's long, not wrong. I don't. Wrong was a slip up.
Freudian slip.
That dismissed the study's findings. We intend to keep the moratorium in place, they told the Tribune. Young kids and teenagers should not be making life-altering medical decisions based on weak evidence. They literally said that it's not weak. Conclusions unambiguously support gender-affirming medical care for trans youth. The conventional wisdom among non-experts has long been that there are limited data on gender-affirming pediatric care. However, results from our exhaustive literature searches have led us to the opposite conclusion. The opposite conclusion on limited data would say that there is plenty of data, not weak evidence. Oh my God. Do you know what's weak evidence? A 3-month rushed, politically fueled study where people didn't even want to put their name on it. That somebody then did a 2-year exhaustive literature review and found the opposite. Funnily, when they did research properly, they found the truth. The risks are far greater if you withhold gender-affirming care than give gender-affirming care, 1% compared to 99%. And if the public is with you, it's because you've told them to be. It's because you've lied to them. It's not that politicians and laws and famous, powerful people are getting more transphobic because the public is getting more transphobic. It's the opposite way around. These politicians and these celebrities and these powerful people are impacting the opinion of the general public. Then they are excusing their bigotry by saying that they are just upholding the views of the general public, but they're the views they've made them have. Like, I almost feel like I can't be too mad at just an everyday person who didn't know what trans meant, and their first experience was some transphobic politician or TV personality spouting bullshit that sounded reasonable to someone who didn't know anything. That's why there is an increase in transphobia generally. On another article, the rushed one from HHS, the transphobic one, was described as a report which cites debunked anti-trans sources and has been roundly condemned by medical experts, claims that gender-affirming care for trans youth is unproven. Bullshit. It gets worse. It goes so far as to advocate for trans youth to instead receive gender exploratory therapy, which medical experts have deemed a euphemism for conversion therapy. It is absolutely a euphemism for conversion therapy. It's like reparative therapy. It's just so frustrating. It's positive in one sense that when we can make some progress on a political and like kind of this top tier level and people stop being so arseholey towards the trans community, we have this foundation of strong science, evidence, justification, research, anecdotal, lived experiences that absolutely prove this transphobia to be the wrong path to take, to show that transphobia is going to leave you on the wrong side of history. It's just frustrating to be seeing it not believed right now, but it will not be cast aside and it will not be this way forever. There will be a time where these research studies, these literature reviews, and all of this evidence and all of the lived experiences of all of the many, many trans people that are out there. There's still only 1% of the population, but the population of planet Earth is very large, which 1% is quite a lot of people. There will be a day where all of that is listened to, and it's so important that it is there for when we as a society, politics, I don't know, whoever the hell can have an influence on this is ready to do so. And we will see that as politics gets less obsessed with being transphobic and villainizing a marginalized community that has literally done nothing wrong and is not the root of all evil, when they stop obsessing over doing that, we will see the general public's opinion be more trans supportive in response. It's just a waiting game, and it's very difficult to wait, but take this as frustrating, but overall, at the core of it, a positive thing. These people who are ignoring this actual scientific, factual evidence are just incredibly either hateful or misguided or scared or a combination of all of the above. And when it is not their time anymore, I am so confident, I am manifesting that somebody will come along and pay attention to it and actually listen to it and be like, you know, instead of letting our opinions guide the way that we treat people, maybe we should listen to the experts and the people actually living through these different experiences in life. That would be wonderful, wouldn't it? Yes. That's it for today's video. I just wanted to have a look through it to keep reiterating the vast amount of evidence there is out there that scientifically supports trans identities. I do also want to say that that comes with the caveat that trans people do not need scientific evidence to know that we are valid, we deserve access to appropriate healthcare, and we exist. I mean, the fact that there are trans people in the world and have always been trans people despite the current and historical pushbacks that have been huge, from criminalization to this really bizarre time that we're in right now with trans people and the politics around trans identity. Why would people still be trans if it was a choice? I'm sorry. It's like, hello, politician who is transphobic. Why don't you just choose to be trans then if you think it's a choice? Just try it. I know you don't want to be, but if you think it's a choice, just you make your brain make you trans and just give it a go. Oh, you can't? Shocking. Yeah, that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching. Think about giving a thumbs up and subscribing if you like it. You'll see some names going up the side of the screen of my lovely Patreons. Thank you so much for supporting me over there. If you want to go support me over there is a link in the description box. There's just like extra bits and pieces behind the scenes. It's a way to support creators. It helps me keep on making content like this. And a big shout out to my top tier Patreons: Ginger Blues, TADHG, Night Soul, Sugar Joe, Elden K, Nesta, The Third Hatman, Max Mates Mods, Dylan Irving, River Champimont, Chloe, Iona Balash, TNS Mum, Sally Drew, Randy, Albar, Marv Mallow, Rachel Raptor, Jesse Entwistle, Gosco, Sienna Lamb, Slayer, Sarah Hobbs, The Paisley Prince, Riley Ray, Bill Dad the Shoeite, AAA_Mars, and the deck of cards. Thank you so much for all your support. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you so much for watching the video. I will see you next time. Much love. Bye.